Kaben Smallwood is here. He's on the Urban Ag Committee at the Department of Agriculture. He reports right to Secretary Vilsack in his office. So we've been trying for a long time, right, Daniel, to have this meeting here, to have him here to talk to you all. And we want to say thank you and have him talk a little bit about what he's doing. So.
All right, thank you. I got the best speaking time because you're all at lunch. So I will let everyone know in full transparency. Past 2 weeks have been a little long for myself. So we just got back from Washington, D.C., where I was up there for about a 5-day period for a speaking event at the American Indian Museum. And then before that, my son is fine now, but he was sick for a good stretch and in the hospital. And so I spent some nights hanging out in Tallahena at the Native American hospital there. So today I'm speaking to you from my heart and from a short list of notes, okay? I don't know if any of you are college football fans. Anybody in here college football fans at all? All right, well, there was a coach that was a coach in Oklahoma. He recently passed away, but his name was Mike Leach, and he coached for a very short period of time in Oklahoma, but he was known as being a pioneer for the air raid offense, and eventually it was his offensive principles that won my alma mater, the University of Oklahoma, a national championship. So I always admired Mike Leach because if you ever looked at him on the sidelines, he had a piece of paper about this big. And you saw the other coaches, and they had binders and binders full of information. So today I'm going to do my best Mike Leach impersonation. Yeah. So I was asked to speak at this event, and the idea and the concept that I was given was how to approach grants and grants successfully. I've been very fortunate that the first break my company got was a grant. And ever since there's been grants that have come and gone that have sustained us as a company. If it wasn't for grants, we would not exist at this point in time. So I think that I may be qualified to speak about them. So what I did was I tried to outline the process of how to go about a grant. And I tried to do it in a 10-step program that hopefully anybody could replicate. Okay? But I will tell you one thing that's not on the list, and it's the most important part, it's collaboration. Okay? It's 100% collaboration. Most of my grant opportunities have come within the USDA purview, so I'll speak directly to that. I also brought 2 opportunities with me to where if I have enough time, I'll be able to talk about those. One that's focused more on the individual farmer and one that's focused more on community building and organizations. Okay? So one thing I'll say again is that you cannot be scared to ask for help. So I'm going to do the same thing. If somebody wouldn't mind to take down these 10 steps as we talk about them and give it to me afterwards, and I'd be happy to get a document that could be emailed out. The more people that do it, the better. If nobody else does it, I'll do it based upon my sheet. But number 1 rule is don't be scared to ask for help. Okay. So all grants, all businesses, all organizations, all passions, they all start with an idea. Okay? And it's even better if it's a good idea. Okay? And everyone, I encourage you to look at your uniqueness, look at the things that make you different as opposed that make you the same, because it's the things that make you different that will inevitably give you more success from a grant standpoint. Again, today, I'm probably the most qualified to speak about USDA programs. I was lucky to be selected on the inaugural Federal Advisory Committee for Urban Ag and Innovative Production. Okay, so I'll say also as a part of that, any ideas that you have, any things that you want me to pass along, please do that too, because the number one thing of importance for that position is getting feedback from you all. Okay, so after your idea, which was step one, step two is locate your funding opportunity. Okay, in order to do that, there's two places that I recommend you start. One is farmers.gov. Farmers.gov. Farmers.gov is going to be the most directed opportunities for you and for your ideas, but I would also encourage you to look outside of those avenues as well. Additional places you can look for grant opportunities would be grants.gov, which would be an even broader funding pool and funding opportunity. And then for people that are a little bit farther along, that maybe have an idea that could serve some research potential that could be used to help further agriculture for us as a whole, I would encourage you to look at NIFA, NIFA.USDA/grants. Okay. While you're doing that, there's another website. I'll throw websites at you. SAM.gov. SAM.gov. SAM stands for the System for Awards Management. Oftentimes people will say, do I need my SAM number to apply for the grant? Sometimes that answer is no, but in order to receive any money, you will have to have a SAM's number. So just go ahead and pretend you're going to submit a successful application, get that part knocked out, keep it updated, that way you always have it to fall back on. Okay. Now that you have some websites to look at, I encourage you to locate your opportunity, which is step number 3. Okay. Opportunity can come in a whole host of different ways. It may be directly applicable to what you're doing. It may be tangential to what you're doing. Most likely, on the websites that I just listed, the number one thing that will give you an advantage on most opportunities is collaboration. Okay? Because step number 4 would be to check your eligibility. To check the eligibility. You'll see that different funding opportunities sometimes don't allow for individual businesses or individual farmers to apply for those grants. And I'll be the first to tell you that can be incredibly frustrating if you're an individual business or if you're an individual trying to pursue some of these opportunities. But the overarching theme still remains that with collaboration, you're able to increase your potential for funding. Because through collaboration, pools of money that were previously unavailable to you can become available. Okay? By way of example, a partnership that my company is trying to work on right now is with the University of Washington, D.C., as well as the Aquaponic Association, because that partnership brings together 3 different types of organizations. My organization being a for-profit company that specializes in the designing and engineering of aquaponic systems. The University of DC, a strategic partner for us. So choose your partner strategically as well. A strategic partner because they are the only land grant university locating in an urban area. So as urban ag and innovative production goes, they seem to be a good partner for us to highlight. And then lastly, the Aquaponic Association, which is a 501c3 organization. In order to outline what that partnership looks like, we're trying to form an MOU, or a Memorandum of Understanding. And that's a document that will pay dividends in the future when it comes time for grant applications, because rather than trying to come up with and describe how our parties are going to work together, you already have that outlined in an MOU, and it can easily be uploaded as a file. Okay, so after you check your eligibility, oftentimes with USDA programs and most state programs, there's going to be something known as a fact sheet. Okay, I saw a couple of fact sheets from presenters before. A fact sheet is going to be a short 1 to 2 page document that helps you determine eligibility and different funding opportunities. Okay. So after you have located that opportunity, you want to check that eligibility in that fact sheet. Number 5 is to determine your funding need. Determine your funding need. Speaking from personal experience, the grant over at Eastern Oklahoma State College was a great grant because it provided my company the opportunity to scale our technology. The downside to that grant was every dollar from that grant went into building infrastructure, and no dollars were set aside to operate the greenhouse. So although we have a nice aquaponic system and nice greenhouse, without people tending to that system and to that greenhouse, it has fallen into disrepair at times. I'll tell you, and thanks to a couple of the volunteers at that table right there, it's pretty amazing because if you are going on the tour on January 30th of this year, there was absolutely nothing growing in that greenhouse. There was zero signs of life. But collaboration brought the greenhouse back to life and made it worthy of somewhere for us to all go and share time and learn. Okay. After you see a funding need that fits what you're looking for, right? Not just short-term needs, because sustainability is long-term. So you have to make sure that the funding opportunity isn't going to lead you down a path that you're not capable of managing. Okay. Check number 6 would be check for a grading rubric. Check for a grading rubric. Oftentimes, USDA has a pre-made sheet that shows how they allocate points for different operations and different funding opportunities. Our local USDA office is wonderful. I heard Claire Hicks's name thrown around. I'll say Amy Crawley as well as Brian Wiles. They are invested in the success of Oklahoma and therefore invested in the success of Oklahoma farmers. They are a great resource and most times will review your grant application and make sure that you meet the minimum criteria for submission. Okay, they're not going to tell you where to improve or how to improve, but they're going to make sure that at least the piece of paper that you put in has a chance to be graded. Okay. Step number 7, and this is a little bit personal to me, and it may be very personal to other folks as well. Check for something that's known as a set aside. A set aside. A set-aside fund is a fund that has specifically been designated for most often some type of underserved population. A set-aside fund will enable your grant application to compete against other individuals that fit within that purview before it goes into the general funding pool. Before it goes into the general funding pool. So even if you do not get the set aside, in my case, a Native American set aside, you will still go into the normal funding pool as well. So it's 2 bites at the same apple. Okay? So check and see whether or not there are any set aside funds. Step number 8 is look at past successful grants. Look at past successful grants. What this will enable you to do is to hone your idea within a framework that has been successful in the past. Okay? Within a framework that has been successful in the past. Number 9 is make an outline. Use that grading rubric to go back and make an outline. An outline will be an invaluable tool when it starts the grant writing process, as you will find most of the work actually goes into preparing the outline. Okay? And step number 10, write the grant. Oftentimes, that's the hardest step, is actually writing the grant. Grants can be arduous, grants can be time-consuming, grants can be unfulfilling. But if you don't write the grant, you won't have any chance. So write the grant. Okay? Oftentimes on a grant cycle, you'll get feedback from reviewers as well. So even if you do not get the grant, the feedback from the reviewers will go a long way in order to helping you refine that grant. Also, I encourage you to write broadly. Write broadly. Because writing broadly will enable you to reuse some of the language, will allow you to reuse some of the research, will allow you to reuse the most valuable asset that they have, and that's the time that you put in to this grant opportunity. Okay. So those 10 steps, albeit there's probably more you could break it down into, but would be a good model for anybody to follow to start to compartmentalize this process. Okay? And steps 1 to 10 are all tied together via collaboration. And I've said that about 4 times now. That's what I tell my students that have to bear with me in macroeconomics. If I say it 3 times, it's important. If I say it 4 times, don't forget it. Because the USDA, in my opinion, and I'll wave my hand and say my opinion, cares less about the individual farmers and more about making the best use of the limited funds that they actually have. And the best way for the USDA to get bang for their buck is when multiple organizations collaborate on grant applications. So with that being said, I'll take specific questions over those steps, or even better, let me go through these 2 different avenues first. Okay. So the first avenue that I'll talk about will be the briefest avenue, and then the second will be the one that I know the most about. So the first is what's known as a USDA micro loan. Okay. The USDA has looked at different ways in order to distribute funding. Sometimes it comes in the form of subsidy, sometimes it comes in the form of grants, but the preferred avenue is through lending. And the microloan is a great opportunity for individual farmers with little to no farming experience to gain access to capital that can be used to assist their operation. Mr. David McClendon back there was in the office when I went in to apply for my USDA microloan 8 years ago. And although we didn't quite know how to fill in every blank 100% correctly, the office showed us grace and gave us an ability to get funds to start our operation. And we paid it back successfully, which is another big deal. Okay? With a loan, you got to pay it back, okay? Albeit at great terms compared to what you're going to get at a bank, because what you're going to get at a bank is nothing, okay? So you have to crawl before you can walk, and you have to walk before you can run, and the microloan gives you that opportunity. There's two different branches in the microloan. One is known as the Opportunity Avenue. I don't even have the right fact sheet in front of me. That's correct, because I'm speaking from the heart. One is the Opportunity Avenue, or operating microloan, and the other is the ownership microloan, okay? So operating microloans and ownership microloans, okay? These two loans can both be up to $50,000. So that means an individual farmer that meets the appropriate qualifications can get up to $100,000 to fund their operation. Okay. The payback terms for the loans are different. Okay. The ownership microloan is geared towards helping offset cost of land, and payback periods can be up to 25 years. So if you're talking $50,000 over 25 years, back of the napkin math shows you're going to be paying about $2,000 plus interest each year. Okay, that can be accessible for some people, okay, especially in the urban ag or innovative production space. Okay. The next loans, or the operating microloans, they can be used for operating or startup expenses. But the difference is that the payback is a 7-year period at most, okay, compared to a 25-year period. So what that would mean for a farmer doing both is you would have two loans running simultaneously. One to service your operating and the other to service your ownership. Okay? And those are ran through the Farm Service Agency offices in the county in which you reside. Let's make sure I got that right. Yeah, great, thank you. And I will tell you, from a federal standpoint, we just made a recommendation that was adopted in a public meeting, so it's now an official recommendation. And that recommendation was to drill down better into the data for the microloan to see whether the amounts, whether the payback times, whether the interest rates were actually encouraging what the USDA is trying to encourage. Question?
So I know some farmers who have been denied for things like child support and student loan debt. Have there been any recommendations that have discussed that? Or you mentioned data, so that's why I made me think of that.
Yeah, I'm not sure to that specific question. That'd probably be an answer better directed to the actually lending agencies themselves. But I do know that organizations as well, businesses and entities, are going to be treated a little bit differently than an individual. So my experience is coming from that as a member of an LLC as opposed to an individual. What I would guess is that most likely there's going to be some type of personal guarantee associated either way, but the lending requirements may be different. Okay, I know that a lot of these opportunities too are going to be geared towards people that are making $1 million and less of revenue a year. So that definitely includes me. So I don't know about the rest of you, but if your operation is pushing past those limits, and you're probably not the right candidate for some of these opportunities.
But you just mentioned that you're an LLC, so whenever you fill out your paperwork as an LLC, you still have to put your LLC ownership's names as well as their credit data is still pulled, correctly?
Yeah, so all of the things that go into any typical loan application are still going to go into the analysis for the FSA loans. What you may find is that they're a little bit more lenient than what your bank may be, okay, and that the terms you're going to get, whether it's interest rate or ability to pay back those loans, and even what the funds can be used for, will dramatically differ from your other funding opportunities. So I don't want to speak too much about the lending process directly. Again, about 8 years ago, for me. So whether or not it's even the same now or not, I can't tell you. But one thing I will check with FSA on, one part that I learned during my time of having a microloan was, say you get 3 years into your microloan, are you still able to go back to reapply for the maximum amount from the FSA loan, offset the cost of your previous loan, and start that application over again? Is that still correct?
You can, if this stuff, if so, made down to, where you owe 30, you can come back in and apply and get 20,000 more to get back to the maximum.
And a lot of people don't know that. Okay, so in that way, the loan kind of acts like a revolving line of credit to a certain extent that can make funds that you have paid down in previous years accessible in future years. Okay. All right, so the next avenue that I will talk about, and I'll look for some head nod approval to share some of our partnership discussions, is the Rural Business Development Grant. So I'm looking for some head nod approval to share. All right, thank you. The Rural Business Development Grant. This was the grant that funded the Eastern Oklahoma State College greenhouse. And it's also a grant that we have just applied for with a local partner here in McAllister. And that partner is the Good Samaritan Outreach, sitting right at this table over here. By partnering with GSO, who is a 501c3 nonprofit, we were able to collaborate, that's number 5, I think, in a manner that was beneficial, shameless company plug, symbiotically to both GSO and to Symbiotic. For GSO, we're hoping it gives them a new tool to further serve their mission of helping underhomed men in the area gain valuable skills that can help them reintegrate back into society, but also to help feed those individuals in most need a healthy meal along the way. So not only giving men the fish, but also teaching men how to fish. Now, will we get funded? Who knows? The likelihood is low, all things considered, but without trying, without writing the grant, we wouldn't have an opportunity to do that. For Symbiotic, it gives us the opportunity to highlight a new technology that we've been working on in our backyard, in our hometown, which is rare. As a design and engineering firm, we have to go where the business is. And that's taken us everywhere from California to DC and now to Azerbaijan, believe it or not. But having a partnership here, being able to see in our own community the potential for growth of their organization, of ours, and for the people that they serve, made it a worthwhile grant partnership. From my standpoint, anybody that needs a letter of support for their applications, I'm happy to provide it, because along with collaborators, you'll also need supporters. Okay? And supporters aren't necessarily tied into that funding source, but they believe in the mission and what you're trying to accomplish. Now, my letter of support will be as good as your idea. Okay, I'll tell you that. Okay. Most grant applications, the more letters of support you have, the more likely it is to receive funding. So the Rural Business Development Grant is one of those grants that has that grading rubric. It's one of those grants that may not be accessible to you as an individual, but could be accessible to you through collaboration. And listen, Symbiotic was not even the grant applicant, but we still took a shot at the Native American set-aside because Symbiotic was going to be receiving some of the benefit from the grant. So we were able to at least try to tie ourselves into that set-aside funding. Okay. So looking at who your partners are and how that can play into different grant opportunities is going to be key to the long-term success and viability of your operations. Okay. The last little tip that I'll give you before going to questions is my other world before this world was a world of higher education, working at Eastern Oklahoma State College, and all colleges have not quite a mandate, but a very strong suggestion to offer continuing education programs. So continuing education programs are those programs that are available to students, but are also available to community members who are not enrolled at the college. Okay, that's how I met quite a few people in here, actually. I met Daniel originally, was at a continuing education certificate class. And now Daniel's been one of the guys that I've had to ask for help probably more times than what I would like to admit. And I hope that you all can add me to that list and vice versa. Okay. So with that being said, we ran through what I'll call Mike Leach's steps towards writing a grant. Right? We ran through an opportunity that would be good for the individual, and we've ran through an opportunity that would be good for collaboration. So now I will happily stop and take questions if we have any time left, maybe 10 minutes. Okay?
You said something about finding like successful grants. Where do you find out where grants were successful?
Yeah, so oftentimes just Google the grant name, okay, and the previous year's award. So, yeah, so USDA puts out press releases from successful grants. I'll tell you a little bit more information since you brought it up. Keep in mind what your grant is going for. Okay, so the Rural Business Development Grant, the goal is to generate job creation. So I didn't do much on the grant, but one thing that I did do was when I read it, I noticed that there was a community kitchen. And by opening that community kitchen up for other individuals to produce value-added goods, which we've heard about a few times now, GSO was able to utilize resources that they currently have to help drive job creation, which I think is the most important part of that Rural Business Development Grant. Okay. I would oftentimes recommend you to come up with some internal metrics. So for me, for the Rural Business Development Grant, I look at how many dollars we're asking for, and I compare it to how many jobs we're creating. And the higher number of jobs you can create and spread that request out, the more likely, in my opinion, the USDA is to fund that opportunity. Okay. Also, keep your metrics, keep your data. Even if you're unsuccessful in your first grant opportunity, data over a long-term period, it's going to add up. So keeping that will help further and show your impact. Okay. So did I? Okay. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
How do you decide who's going to be the lead on your grant?
By who the most valuable component is. Okay. Say, for example, I assume you're with Langston. Mm-hmm. Okay. So if I was going to go in and partner with Langston, which I've tried to a couple of times, I don't know if we've ever had success, but if it's something that's going to be driven by continuing education, if it's something that's going to be driven by outreach, if it's something going to be driven by proximity to Langston, if it's something that's going to be driven by availability of black farmers, if it's something that's going to be driven by something that falls within your purview, then you need to be the lead applicant. If it's going to be driven by innovative production or water conservation or job creation, then that would fall on us. Okay. Also, you have to look at the funding opportunity as well to determine eligibility, right? Because eligibility is key to the whole thing. Question?
How did you get to become a committee member for the Urban Ag?
So Chief Gary Batten made a recommendation, and I was selected out of 300 applicants across the U.S. I think mainly, if I'm being honest with you, because of my CDIB card and my geography. I think those two things played a pretty big avenue, but also because we helped my company specialize in getting food production and conserving natural resources within marginalized communities. Since we had had success working with different organizations in the past, I also think it was a little bit of luck, because when Secretary Vilsack came to Oklahoma with the Obama administration, I actually had the opportunity to meet him, and I think those were all kind of tied in together, to be honest with you. I will say nominations are open, okay, for the USDA Advisory Committee, Urban Ag and Innovative Production Task Force. So every year, 4 people cycle off, which means 4 people have to cycle on. So look into that process. If you know someone that's worthy of a nomination, in your opinion, ask them if they want to participate and put their name forward. I would love to continue having Oklahoma represented on the task force. That address your question? Yeah. Thank you. Do we have any other questions? Well, thank you very much for spending your lunch with me. I hope it was an informative conversation.